I've noticed that as we've continued working together, most notably these last two projects, I feel like the dynamic has become more of a collaboration than me just hiring you to mix and master. Would you say that that's the goal for you when it comes to most of your clients to achieve that dynamic?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that I feel like more often than not, when I'm working with a new client or an artist, I like to refer to them as my artists. When I'm working with a new artist, they're doing stuff and we don't really have that rapport to go back and forth. I hear so many things. I hear so much. My brain is weird and I will hear music and sounds and stuff where it doesn't need to be there. I was working on a song with a client who I've developed a very creative relationship with the other day, and he sent me it's like the first single he put out before he ever started working with me. So I'm like basically rebranding his first single as an artist. And there's a drum loop in there and he's trying to rewrite the vocal melody. It's super pop music. And I hear this drum loop that he made. And in the drum loop, it's like boom, boom, ba, 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 just boom, 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 ba, 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 ba. And it's so melodic, but he doesn't hear it. I'm like, dude, there's literally a melody right there. Like, ba, 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 ba. He's coming right there with the toms. And I sang it to him and he's like, what the fuck? I didn't even realize that. Having the ability to have a stripped down song and explain to somebody, hey, this is what I think we should do. Even if they don't like it or go with it, just being comfortable enough to do that is such a great release as a creative person. And I try to get there with as many people as I can as fast as possible because that is the goal. Because I feel like one part of getting artists' music to the place where it needs to be professional and ready to be, radio ready or to do the best of what they're trying to convey. Sometimes they need a little bit of spice and they might not be aware of it. And it's important for me to, hey, I love what you're making here. This is really good, but I think that those MIDI guitars have got to go. I can record guitar for you and we can next level this shit. And I wish I could be there from the jump, but it's like until I get to a place where people really look at me as like, oh, that's the dude, you got to do what he says. I sort of have to wait. Yeah. And that sucks because then I feel like the music is suffering because I can't comfortably assess their project with them.
Well, you don't want to overstep your boundaries either.
Of course, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like you're saying to me, like, you're the expert on your music, even if you may have an idea like, oh, maybe you could do, like you're saying, the MIDI guitar should go, we should have live guitar with, but at the same time, you don't want, especially if it's a new client, you don't want to be like, that could be kind of off-putting. Like, or like I was saying with the ego, like there's a sense of control, for me, there's a lot of parts of my life I don't always have control over, but I know with my music, I got fucking control. I could say this is going to do whatever the fuck I want it to do within what I can do. So it's kind of like if someone new is saying, oh, you should do this or that, that could be off-putting, but doesn't mean you're wrong.
I know, and that's the hard part, but I feel like the collaborative thing is like really important because I'm an engineer. I mix the music, but I'm also a producer. I'm also an artist. I'm also a musician. I am also a listener and a fan. Okay, I go through all of the hats. I got tons of them. All I want, my end goal, is for my artist music to be the absolute best that we can make it. And I hate not being able to do that because I'm not comfortable with them. Like I have this one client, I've never met the guy in my life. The pandemic has done weird things. I have this friend that I met a couple times because he was friends with someone I toured with and he toured with him. And we kind of shot the shit at a couple shows, high-fived, whatever. And then I became his engineer. And then he introduced me to one of his friends. And now I became that guy's engineer. And the other dude who I kind of met, he was super comfortable with like, hey, let's just collab on this and let's go for it. That's the vibe that we got, Sure. This new guy, I didn't really know him very well, so it took like a whole EP and a couple of featured tracks before I was like, hey, we could probably do this to make it better. And I was so like the longest 35 seconds of my life.
Not even that long. Seeing the dots. Like, oh.
I know. And I'm like, bro, why did you have to be here when I sent that message? Like, you could have just like not, you know, I would have forgot and then saw it and been like, oh, wow, I totally forgot. But he was open to it. But I was like, nice. And we ended up collaborating on a song. I ended up doing a remix for him, and it's dope. I remixed his song. I did all the guitars differently myself, and it was like, hey, if you ever need this, like, whatever we got to do to make the song get to the next level, it's a thing. And I feel like my best music, I don't want this to sound like I'm full of myself, because it's not about me, but the music that I think is the best is when I can help guide it to something. You know, like I have my friends are like, oh, like, I wish we could get scratches. I'm like, well, we can get you scratches. You know, like, oh, it would be nice to have live drums. But I'm like, whoa, we can get live drums. Yeah. You know, like, I'm looking for a bass player, but I don't know anybody. But I'm like, bro, I can do it, or I can find you somebody who can do it. Like, I just want to be able to do that. And that's very inspiring to me, because that reminds me of something that I learned from my mentor, Chris Paxton. When I was interning from him, he's a drummer. Okay, he's a drummer, he's a drum programmer, he's an engineer, he's brilliant, but he plays drums primarily. So he could pencil in drums all day long, give you the best groove, timing is impeccable, but he couldn't really play instruments at the time. And so he would just bring people in. He'd be like, okay, we're going to make this guy's track dope. Got a bass player here. And then he would record the bass player, and then he would edit the bass player, and then he would make the track. And I'm like, what? You just did that. And he was like, it's what it needed.
Yeah.
And that sense of it's what it needed. It doesn't have to be me. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. If you have a friend who plays bass and he's dope, let's use your friend. But to be able to suggest that something is missing an element, I feel like it's important. Even if you don't want to go with like the acoustic guitar in that song, I heard that it was going to kill me forever. I might ask you to remix that song so I could put that acoustic guitar in there. But being comfortable enough to at least ask is at least enough to scratch my creative itch once in a while, because I feel like even myself, when I produce stuff, I have to send it to people. Like, what do you think of this? I need your feedback. And even if they don't have an answer for me asking you and feeling comfortable enough to put myself out there, it gives me ideas. Because I'm like, oh, you know what I should have done? They're going to think I'm an idiot because I didn't do this. That's what it's missing. And that's what I think everybody needs. And I wish I could provide for everybody.
Yeah.
If that even makes sense.
No, it definitely it makes sense, because I was thinking in there while you're explaining that, because of course I'm always looking at the parallels between us making music together. In Breakfast, I keep going back to the word ego, but like it was to the point where like I wanted every track on there to be produced by me. And I don't mean song track, I mean tracks in the song. Every instrument I made that melody, I made that drum, whatever. And and then gradually over time, even like I was saying, Isabel played a melody on a couple songs. There's a time where I would get kind of offended, because I'm like, yo, this is my thing, and it's part of that control where like, this is the only thing that I can make exactly how I want it to be, And then over time, like you're saying, I don't give a fuck if it's me or not. After a while, I started letting go of that and being like, yeah, like I don't need to make. And it was a false understanding of, I was used to think naively that all these huge producers, that they did everything themselves.
No.
Bruh, I swear to God, as a younger person.
How would you know, though?
Yeah. As a younger person, I thought that not only did they produce everything themselves, I thought they mixed and mastered everything themselves. I thought I thought these artists were up in the fucking room by themselves, lonely as shit. And then I look and I'm like, oh, everyone there they're just kicking it. Then I'm realizing, oh no, they're bringing all these other artists in. They're fucking also playing, helping things out.
They are kicking it.
Yeah, they are.
But they're there for when they're needed.
They're coming in, they're laying down. Someone else is laying down guitar on that. Someone else is playing a melody. Someone else is doing this, playing a synth on that or a bass line. And I was like, oh fuck, because you're still producing if you're orchestrating it. But to round that back to the relationship between you and a client or an artist, at Breakfast, I wasn't ready to even acknowledge that. Seconds, I still wasn't really ready to acknowledge that. Lunch, I had you play guitar on Kombucha, and you added some percussion to Pink Hydro Flask. Super small things, and you added some 808s to Kombucha.
Oh yeah.
And that's when I was realizing, I'm like, I suck at doing 808s. I struggle with it. That and making it balance and mixed with everything else, I always just have it just overpowering everything. So I was like, he knows how to do that. And I'd ask you, then I was like, oh, you know, having someone else who knows how to do that better than you, you remove the ego of trying to do everything yourself. It could sound better.
The song gets better,
and it could still be exactly what you're trying to make it. It's still your vision if you have someone help it out. And you know, like right there, that took 3 EPs to get to that balance. But like you know, like you agree that that is the dynamic that you do hope to achieve. Do you ever have artists that you're like, yeah, I'm cool if I just mix their stuff, mix it how they want it, and then that's that? Or would you say every artist you're like, I want to get to that level where we're collaborative?
I like the option.
Okay.
I feel like not every song needs something. I've been mixing for Voltaire for like years now. And I'm not the only engineer he works with too. He's got a couple other people. I think I've been able to snag him recently because my deals, my prices are like workable for him and my timeline is quick. But there are some times where I get stuff from him where I'm like, your song, it needs bass. Can I put bass? Can I please put bass? And in the beginning it was like, because he's also an artist. He also mixes himself. He produces himself. And I'm like, oh, but then it became like, hey, I'm going to like throw some stuff on this chorus to make it sound crazy. That was cool. And he's like, yeah, dude, whatever, go for it. And it's like 2 projects ago, he's another artist. I can't keep up with that motherfucker.
Was it the Substance one?
Substance I did a lot with, and it was just like us going back and forth and me being like, this is so close to being like great, can I just change a couple things? And he was super on board. He was like, yeah, as long as it sounds dope. And then he would just tell me like, I really like what you're doing with this track and I think it sounds good. I'm super proud of that. The last one he just put out, Fire, yes, Fire EP, I didn't touch shit. I was like, oh yeah, yo, you fucking did it on this one.
That's wild, because for some reason I thought you were having that same because I do know you'll play bass and stuff like that, because I know there's Substance. There's the one with the super dope album cover, time.
Yes.
Time lapse. I'm fucking up.
Space time.
That's time lapse. I know it's Substance, Space Time, then Fire. And for some reason, I thought as it was progressing, you were getting maybe more involved.
I would say that I did the most on Space Time, I think, and I did a little bit on Substance, but the most was Space Time. I wouldn't say that I co-produced, but I did something on like every track. Okay. Even if it wasn't like adding an instrument, you know, I would say like, we need this hook to pop, and I would duplicate his instrument and like pitch it and make it sound extra weird, which in turn led to me developing my mixing, because I'm like, I can make a track sound different and better without actually adding anything. I can just alter it. And that was like, I can achieve my goal without overstepping a boundary. Yeah. But when we got to the Fire EP, I was just like,
that one, that's probably my favorite. Not because I'm featured on it.
Yeah.
No, that one's my favorite because it kind of had this feeling to me. This actually, honestly, this is going to tie into my next question. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a long thing. His music, because he's the perfect example for this next question. His music is like Double Dragon, where I say it's mad unique. It's not always as easily digestible as other people's music, but it's mad unique to the point where his shit fucking takes you to whatever fucking whatever universe that motherfucker's living in.
Bro.
And I don't know if it was intentional, but do you notice the last track on the album is probably the most, not average as far as like basic, but like average, like sounds like another artist could be on it. It was like more of an old school hip hop kind of beat.
The one with the feature?
So I could hear a lot of different artists rapping on this.
It's fucked up to believe that his producing ability is wild. He be going from like video game shit to this.
Like he could fucking make like an old school inspired boom bap project, but he chooses not to, which is dope, because all these songs takes you to this whole fucking other universe, and that shit's like you just went home after this wild trip.
Straight up.
You know what I mean?
He brought you
like,
back.
I told him that, like, when I heard it, I was like, dude, the fact that you ended on like that song that sounds, I can't think of the word, but it sounds like any other artist could be on it.
It sounds like golden era hip hop.
Yeah, it doesn't sound super Voltaire, but the fact that he's still able to pull it off in his own way.
Bro, and he raps so good on that shit. I'm like, what? His ability to switch up his style is fucking crazy.
Like, so the fact that we naturally got into this is is a trip music? Because I'm going to ask you this question and I'll explain why I'm thinking this.
Okay.
So from what we were just kind of saying about the dynamics with your clients, and you were specifically talking about Voltaire, you know, how you guys in the past 3 projects, kind of leads me into the next question where you have this huge network of friends and artists that you work with. Do you ever have a specific vision for them of where their music could go in a creative direction? So an example, when we were working on Potluck, you had like you got a kick out of the sample tracks. And there's only 2 at the time, but you're like, yo, if you had a whole EP like that would be dope. You know, I sometimes too hear Voltaire songs, and he's so unique. And when, you know, the blending of the hip hop, knowing that he has the capacity to do that, not that I want him to ever abandon the super unique beats he makes, because that's Voltaire Slapadelic,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Totally.
But do you, with him, like the same thing with me, with other artists, do you ever have like an ear for like their music, or like, you know what, it would be so dope if they took their production just a little bit differently and did stuff like this? Do you ever have visions for your artists, or the artists you work with?
Yeah, totally. We can stick with Voltaire. We have an EP where we collab together, and that was just beats I wanted to hear him on.
Yeah.
That was just me saying, like, let me produce some shit and you can rap and I'll like sing around you. Like, let's see what that would sound like. And that was just me doing that.
Not to cut you off, but that's the first project by him I heard. So that totally got me, you know, because I knew you. I didn't really know him. So years before I met him, I had already heard his music.
Voltaire Slaps a Danny.
Through that. And the album cover was hella funny to me. And I was like,
right here, dude.
Yeah, let me fuck around. Like, let me listen to that shit. But like, even that doesn't sound like his fucking, the world he takes you in with his production.
No.
Like, do you, like on I mean like on a grand span of like where they would go with their music, do you ever have like a huge vision like that? I know it's kind of weird to.
No, there's some people where I'm like, I got this one dude, my boy Monster, he's locked up right now. He is such a modern rapper. And we had spent like years shaping him into like, instead of following behind what the rappers were doing, setting the curve, you know, like getting ahead of it and trying to be modern while it's out. And towards the end of our relationship, because we're obviously not talking now, he ended up developing a style and a flow that like is what music sounds like. And it's so disappointing because I had heard him. I'm like, bro, you're so close. You're almost there. Like, we've been putting so much effort into it. And it didn't work out. And honestly, J. Cole has a couple songs on his new album where I'm like, bro, that was you, dog.
Is it that like rapping and to get melodic out of nowhere with it?
Yes, and also like some of his like rap bars, like time wise, don't make sense. Like it's almost like some of these bars on J. Cole's new album, like he didn't write them like formulaically. He wrote them. He just wrote some shit and is rapping it.
Yeah,
and that shit is that type of shit where I'm like, bro. Kevin Gates style stuff too. There's this dude that I used to work with that he was a really good singer and he had this really raspy voice when he was singing and he hated it. And I'm like, you could do a whole thing like that. Like, you know, like Post Malone be doing some like rock type shit. Like he could really be doing some shit and he could rap real good too. Didn't fall through with it. That's the worst thing is when I have those visions with someone and I'm like, yo, you could be something. And they are always the people who don't do it.
You know what? The thing about the Voltaire one, for some reason, maybe because he's from Houston, correct?
Austin, Houston, yeah.
Okay, I know he has like influence for like DJ Screw and stuff like that. And that might be the connection, but for some fucking reason, I feel like if you took Voltaire's beats and meshed them with some of the elements like in Travis Scott beats, I just feel like it would be so wild. Because Travis Scott makes very modern music, but it's very, it's his.
Yes.
And if you remove Travis Scott, he always has the same flow with autotune. It's always the same, like that could get old. And the autotune gets old, but just the production is what I always go for him. And I don't know what the fuck, I always have the same correlation. Maybe it's kind of dark. But like if Voltaire's beats and Travis Scott's beats had a baby and Voltaire was rapping over that, for some reason I'm like, yo, that shit would be fucking wild.
We should try to make that.
I absolutely would. But like the same thing, I don't want to overstep my boundaries. And
maybe you just need to ask him like, hey, let's do a collab project where I make all the beats.
Yeah, see if he would be down. Another one is you you did guitar for the song "Still Me" by Radical.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the only type of song on his last album that's like that. I feel as far as super, he gets melodic a lot.
Yep.
But it was a little bit rock influenced, but it wasn't slappers. He does slappers fucking well.
Yes, he does.
Fucking well. But I'm like, yo, if he had an EP of just this melodic, of course rapping, because he could rap his ass
On
off.
Still Me, you were like stuff like Still Me, you mean? Or like...
Yeah, like, his chorus, like, like, he could, like, I don't personally know if he could really sing, but he could use that enough.
He won't say that he can, but he can.
He has just hearing that, I'm like, yo, he could make a fucking whole ass song like that.
He absolutely could, yeah.
And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, man, but it's hard to say that to someone who could still rap their ass off.
Yeah, I've been making music with him since I like started. Like we've had visions for each other and for collaborations, but it's been so hard because we're like adults and living, and he's allergic to cats now. So like, it's trash. But honestly, like I've been working with him longer than I've been working with Skeptic. I lived with one of my homies after I got kicked out of my parents' house, and he was dating the sister of the homie who I lived with, and that's how we met. Okay. And we were like, oh, you do music, I do music, let's fuck around. And we started making some shit. And it was so back in the day, like I was borrowing my homie's interface, and all we had was a 58, and he recorded it holding the mic. And it was like, that was what we had. That's how long ago this was. I'm talking like 2010. Okay. We've come a long way, and there's a lot of things I could see him doing for sure. And there's a lot of things he could see me doing. We just haven't gotten to.
Because that's just like in the same, like how I'm asking about, like having these visions. Like I hear his music, and I'm like, I don't ever want you to stop making slappers. But if you had like a project with more of these singing ones, maybe that's not what he wants to do. But I'm like, yo, there's so like he could do it so well.
He can. He really
you know what
can.
I mean? That's the things I'm talking about, is not as much saying don't do this you're not good at. You're plenty good at what you're doing. But like I'm saying, I'm like, man, if you did a little bit more of these ones, like that would be so fucking dope. But you don't want to step on artists' toes either, because we all have pride, you know what I mean?
We all do have pride.
In the same way, that's what I also try to do, is like when you said, man, if Ian had more of these, beats with the samples, have that kind of style, I'm like, all right, bet, I'll take that. Let me take that note. Half my fucking album's gonna have that style now. But in the same with like the production with Voltaire.
Having that humility though, I feel like. Not even humility, but just me. I feel like everybody being like, hey, we like these things. You took it and ran with that shit.
Yeah, I never would have done that like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I'd be like, nah, bro. I still want to make the beats though. I'm making.
But you made some dope shit by pushing yourself like that. Just I'm glad that I had said something, because I love this new shit that you really did. Like, all right, you like this? Find that.
Watch this. I'm gonna do 3 times more of that motherfucker.
And
shit.
you did, and I love all of them. This shit is amazing. And it's like, I'm jealous in a way that you got such feedback that pushed you to make such great shit. I'm like, yo, where's my me telling me how to make?
That was kind of why I was asking, like, do you ever have these visions for your artists? Like, do you ever, you did that for me, not even intentionally, but how about like
I had wanted it for a while.
Have you ever intentionally like told like an artist, like, like I was saying about Radical, like, yo, like what if you push the melodic shit like even more? Like, do you ever? Because this is way more than recommending, hey, you should have some guitar on a track.
Yeah, that is.
I mean, this is like the direction, like even if it's just for the next project. Like, do you ever find yourself, whether or not you act upon it, like sitting there listening and having a vision, like, damn, I want, like, that would be so dope if they move in this direction.
Absolutely, and I wish that I could make it reality, make it come to fruition more often than I'm able to. But like, it's just like with even suggesting me to do production on stuff, it's just not something you just, hey, I love you as an artist, but like, wouldn't it be cool if you did something like this? Like, I feel like it's like almost offensive. Like,
yeah, that's the hard thing, because I
love your food, but what if you cooked something else?
Yeah, because like you were saying about the humility, like I easily could have been like, oh, so he don't like my beats that are 100% by me.
And it's like, I wasn't saying that, but it's just like, well, this is an interesting thing. I'd like you to tap into that. Yeah. I wish that I could do it to more people, but I definitely do get that.
Do you have any artists that you're comfortable enough doing that intentionally?
That's a good question. I feel like, yeah, maybe I've told you that thing right there because I had that vision and you did it, but it's like not very often do I feel confident in myself enough, because it's like, not only does that person have to make that music, but I also have to help them bring it to what I.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing too, is when I was having the whole thing about, you know, the Voltaire beats, you're like, well, you should offer it. Then I was like, oh, I don't know if I could you know, follow through and actually do that though.
I was confident.
I have a vision for it, but it's a vision. It's a vision. Executing, it's a whole different.
It's so hard, and the reason I was comfortable telling you to build off of the sample stuff is because we had already done it.
Yeah,
I'm like, yo, we can do this.
Yeah,
we should do more of that. Like, but I guess that's I in that situation, it's up to the artist to sort of put themselves in that situation, and for me to go, hey, these songs are good, but that is, we need more. Can I order some of that? Like, that's what I need to wait for, because if I hear someone doing something, it's hard. I don't know, maybe I should work on trying to just do that. It's probably a good thing for me.
Like, I don't want to tell you, hey, start getting it up in everyone's mix and be like, hey, do this. Like, you know, to start controlling us, like really Suge Knight the fucking game. Just really start telling people.
I'm not going to hang nobody out a window.
Just start being P. Diddy with the shit and telling them what the fuck to do.
Yo, your snare trash. Put my name on the credits.
But like, now put my name on the credits. But I mean, like, I don't know, like, I just feel like, I don't know, like, it's hard because, like you said, it could easily offend people. But like, man, like, there are solid potentials, and not potentials as far as making music better, but just making different type of music that they for sure could make equally as well or just as great. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's
difficult. That's a good question. Yeah, I definitely am going to work on that. I'm not going to get all bossy with people, but I will start thinking more about like where things can go.
I mean, I would say so, just in the sense that look how that one little statement that you just said while you were talking about, you sent me a 20-minute video talking about the last album, and you had one little statement in there that at the time when I first heard it didn't really click, but it stuck. And then, you know, you just said, you know, he should make more of these. I really like these. And then, like, you know, a month later when I'm starting the process of making another one, I was like, oh, where did I start? Oh, last time I made a song like that. I was like, well, that shit, people like that one. And I was like, shit, he said I should make a lot more of those. I was like, I'm going to make a lot more of those. You know, even if it's not a consultation like, hey, you should really start making these. But like, you know, I think, you know, depending on the artists and their, you know, their pride and their, you know, their direction and where they're trying to go, I think a lot of your artists would benefit from, you know, certain type of insights and not advice, but just like thoughts. You know, what, you know, have you ever thought about trying to do that? Because I think that shit would sound fucking dope.
I'll definitely bottle that and hopefully spill it out confidently at the right time.
This is like, nah, fam. You know what? Maybe this ain't working out.
I'm like, all right, I'm going to go home and cry for 3 days. Late.